This is DMP Kenya, and welcome back to Turning the Mirror podcast. This is where we bring you the reflection of politics and governance across our country, Kenya, and even surpassing our boundaries. And today we're looking onto this man, Raila Odinga, and we know, everybody knows all over the country that he is lost in his AUC bid for the chairman position. And now we really don't know, we don't understand, perhaps we know, and perhaps you also have a thought. We want to look at the reasons why he's lost this election. Welcome, Coach.
Yeah, it's something that we have to actually look into very keenly because remember the government of Kenya put in a lot of effort to ensure that Raila won this. Raila himself also put in a lot of efforts moving around the continent to ensure he wins this. But then now results has come otherwise. Now, actually relating this to several aspects. The first one, maybe we would look at what just happened during the election process, because we had several rounds, and among the rounds we saw Raila Odinga get. Among the very first rounds, we saw Raila Odinga get some tangible votes. We also saw the winner also get tangible votes, and then we also had Randriamandrato also get some votes, though less. I want to also say that once Randriamandrato was dropped, I believe that majority of those who voted for Randriamandrato placed their votes on Mahmoud Ali. And this would come as a result of maybe they didn't believe in Raila's cause, or maybe they just had they were just thinking otherwise. And so in this instance, I want to first of all relate this to what has been going on across the continent. We all know that there have been conflicts in the DRC Congo, in the eastern DRC. And we saw the president of Kenya, that is His Excellency William Ruto, take a stand, and actually as the chair of the EAC community, he wanted to chair this meeting and actually led the meeting. And but in his first instances and the first approaches to this, he even put on his X that he had called the president of France to deliberate on how that issue could be dealt with. And I want to believe that William Ruto, being the chief campaigner of Raila Odinga, and actually one of the person who was pushing for his candidature, this could have cost Raila Odinga this, because remember, France, in Africa, France doesn't have good history. And even most of the countries where we've seen serious coup conducted by the military, they are countries speaking they are French-speaking countries, and as a matter of fact, they are countries which were colonized by France, and therefore France has been interfering with their internal affairs. And therefore, Ruto, having talked to the president of France to try help or curb or stop whatever was happening in DRC, made most of the countries which were colonized by the French, by French or France, to believe that when Raila would be at the helm of AUC, then Ruto would still, because Ruto anyway is the man who pushed his candidature, then Ruto would still use him otherwise. So in other words, Raila was seen by these people as a man who was pro-French and as a man who was pro the Western countries, and therefore would be used by the Western countries to interfere with what was going on within the African territory.
And just out of what you can analyze and what you can see out of what was happening, can you just by mention, maybe tell us about the countries which possibly voted for Randriamandrato?
Okay, we cannot mention exactly which country did vote, but we can say some of the SADC countries, the countries within the SADC community, maybe voted for him because of the message maybe that came from the secretariat, and of course his own country, and among other countries. We cannot say exactly which country voted for who, because it was a means of secret ballot. Again also relate these laws to what has been going on in Kenya. Remember, we've had abductions and exiles of a few individuals. Remember, we also have these abductions touching on key figures, those who are also not Kenyan citizens. We remember Kisa Besigye of Uganda, who was actually abducted in Nairobi, the capital city of Kenya. We also had our people. We also had two other guys also abducted and sent back to their country. And remember, with this happening, it also interfered with how the other countries were looking at us, and maybe they didn't want that to go on maybe past the Kenyan borders. So maybe they feared or felt some fear, and maybe saw this as maybe a country where there's not such much democracy. So I also relate it to the abductions of both the foreigners and also the citizens of Kenya.
You're just trying to say that one of the main causes of his failure is the Kenya Kwanza government.
Yes, the Kenya Kwanza government. So the government played a very big role in ensuring Raila failed, in as much as they played a very big role in ensuring they were campaigning for Raila.
And again, let's look at the war in Eastern DRC. You know, this time when Ruto did call the president of France when we had this issue at hand. You know, it played in hand, and when you're speaking about French-speaking countries, that one, DRC is in mention.
Yes.
And then out of that, we can just see then the president of DRC might have not voted for Raila, and also some other people who are against the Ruto way. Or do we know those countries?
No, I don't really want to mention a specific country,
like
because we can accuse a country falsely. But in real sense, because you know this was a secret ballot. Remember Raila himself, as you could even hear the lead campaigners like PS Singoei talking yesterday, they were saying that Raila had visited over 30 countries and that they were sure of at least 30 votes from the countries Raila visited, and other votes again from those who William Ruto talked to directly.
Okay.
So you might think that this person voted for Raila, but in real sense they didn't. You might think he didn't vote, but he did. But we can look at what maybe might influenced the voting, how it went.
Okay.
Again, remember, there have been a serious campaign online by the Gen Z, the millennials, and some of key figures like Miguna and the likes of Gaitho, key figures online who have been decampaigning Raila Odinga, looking at him as a betrayer, saying that Raila Odinga is not speaking against the wrongs which are happening in the country, and maybe he's now sleeping with the government in ensuring the atrocities are going on. And so these campaigns might also have played a key role, because remember, some of the people who were decampaigning Raila online went to as far as mentioning the presidents at a personal level in their X handles. Like they were addressing these presidents directly. You were mentioned, and you know, even you on your X, if you are mentioned, you'll get a notification that you are mentioned.
Of course.
And if the mentions are so many, you'll get concerned, and therefore you might also pass through these charts and get to know this is their point of view. So I also believe that the campaigns that happened online that were trying to decampaign Raila Odinga's candidature played a very big role also in this case.
You know, I said that, you know, Raila was a man who was well positioned for this. We've seen his fight through democracy, fighting for Kenya, fighting for human rights, and he has all that history and all that profile. That if somebody was to choose for a good leader, a person who is so stagnant, will go for Raila. And do you really think age could have been a factor? Because when you speak of William Ruto, the government, the current government, but Raila has been somebody who has been against the governments that have been in Kenya. He's been an opposition leader for the longest time now, even till now, even to the last election. And the age that maybe these presidents could see that this man is an old now, he's 80 years old of age, and now will not be able to run the activities that will not be up to task, and will just instead be controlled by other people who are influencing his candidature.
Personally, I don't really think age was a big factor, because if we look at the history of these candidates, everyone had their own strengths. Raila, democracy, the Djibouti guy, economy, and Randramandrato also had their own strength. So everyone had their history. But I don't really think if age played a factor here, because some of the presidents in Africa are his age mates. Actually, a good number of presidents presidents. Some are even way older than him. So I don't really think if age played a role in this, because in Africa, most elections are not done depending on the age. They look at a person. So that is why I want to attribute his loss not to age per se, but to the happenings that have been going on around the continent and also within the country. Others might also have maybe seen him as a Ruto puppet. And remember, some time back, Ruto spoke when he came to power. He spoke and said that Africa cannot keep depending on the West for support and everything. Again, just within a few months, he double spoke and again went back to the West, where he was saying we cannot depend on West for so long. And so some of the countries, some of the presidents, some of the heads of states were looking at William Ruto, who is a double speaker. He says this, but in a real sense, he means this. So maybe again, they might have not also kind of believed everything he said when campaigning for Raila. Yeah, so I'll attribute these laws to such things.
I know you personally, you are a Pan-Africanist, and what I'm sure of, that you know the real characteristics and features of a real Pan-Africanist. You know, it might be just a mere play of words. We've seen Raila being mentioned as a Pan-Africanist, as a tough one, the Lion of Africa. And just according to what you see, what you know, what you think, and specifically this time when there's talks across Africa, that Africa must now realize that it must unite within itself, within the countries of Africa, aside we remove the temporary borders that are containing us in differences. And now people are saying that Raila is a Pan-Africanist, he can do this. But when you heard the Djibouti candidate, when you heard him speak, he was speaking real Pan-Africanism. Could that in some way be a factor, or Raila is also well placed, a Pan-Africanist?
I think from what Raila has done, from his speeches, from what he has done, even when he was the high representative of AU when it came to infrastructure during the past regime, I think whatever he has done, what he has spoke out there, portrays him out there as a Pan-Africanist. But again, you know, even teachers, in every game, you must get a best performer when it comes to any game. And maybe when it comes to Pan-Africanism, when it came to their speeches when they were talking to Africans, I want to believe in one way or the other, the Djibouti guy brought out the Pan-Africanism better than how Raila brought it. Both of them, I'd say they are Pan-Africanists. I know Raila more than I know the Djibouti guy, and I'd say Raila is a Pan-African. But now how he brought it out, how the presentation, the Djibouti guy presented himself better when it came to Pan-Africanism. Again, during the campaigns and the decampaigns, the online media played a key role, because again, you would realize most of the people who were decampaigning Raila seriously mentioned the Pan-Africanism aspect of it. And some were saying that he is a pretender and all that. So I think all these played a key role in ensuring Raila lost.
Sure. As he has said that Raila was a better candidate, but the Djibouti candidate was way best according to the people we had for this contest. And that is what we had for you this time. Ensure that you subscribe to DMP Kenya and keep tuning to us at Turning the Mirror podcast. Thank you.